it's really not white versus black, it's rich versus poor.
Yeah.
And the rich versus poor are trying to disguise it as black versus white.
A big part of it is an algorithm problem. If I support Trump, I'm gonna get all sorts of news about how Kamala's this, a Marxist, which will just give me that confirmation bias, and vice versa.
People want to identify with a tribe, and it's so intertwined with the emotions of good versus evil.
That this is all by design.
The people that you can't criticize are the people who rules over you. And
you see that the world's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's not all about chasing your passions. And I think as the world shifts into more instability, the strong survive, and the same priorities that somebody, a teenager growing up in the early 2000s or the 90s has, it's completely different from the world we live in today. A lot of ingredients that are legally allowed in, cereal or meat or McDonald's or any of the sort is completely restricted, and a lot of the things that we eat here are punishable by jail if they, in Europe.
Now we're on camera, and I had just this instinct of like George Orwell's Big Brother. Don't talk about the system, don't talk about the system, because it can lead to my downfall.
Did you watch the debate?
The debate, I did watch a little bit of the debate.
Yeah.
My takes on the debate, I don't think anyone moved. I think people already know they're gonna vote for Trump. Trump already has his database. Trump already has his supporters. Kamala already has her supporters. I don't think the debate was going to make anybody flip, but I will say this, and I'm paraphrasing off of Elon Musk, because he said it best, that I agree with. Kamala did better than I thought, probably the majority of the American public thought.
Yeah.
She did look better than most people would think. Trump had 3 versus 1.
Yeah.
But I think tribe versus tribe, like the tribes are still rocking with Trump, and people are going to still rock with Kamala.
Well, do you think they're rocking with Kamala, or you think they're just still anti-Trump? Like it's the never Trumpers.
Man, I think.
And just to follow up, she's, to this day, she's still got no clear plan. She wasn't, nominated to be the Democratic nominee, and so. And then my uncle just posted an affidavit that an ABC employee went and got signed and notarized, that they literally set this up, like ABC set it up to where she was not going to get any hard questions. Podium was going to be smaller for her. No fact checking where they were going to fact check Donald Trump. No talking about her as a U.S. DA over in San Francisco. And so she just got to completely skate by it. And like you said, it was 3 against 1. And so I think that's why it didn't really shift, because people know who Trump is.
Yeah.
And because Kamala did better, it's just kind of confirmation bias that, this is why I'm against Trump,
So let's say out of 100% of Kamala's supporters, I think 25 of them are Kamala supporters, and I think the other 75 have Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah.
At one point, I had Trump derangement syndrome. I grew up in a blue state. I went to a liberal arts school, and so many of our political beliefs are inherited by our family and by our community. So I was just repeating what was told to me, and I thought that was normal. I thought I was doing something for the greater good. It wasn't until I questioned the information in front of me, until I formed my own opinions. I'm like, wait a minute, there's a lot of hypocrisy. That's why I like to say I'm a defector of left-wing ideologies.
Yeah. Why do you think people are still stuck in you think it's because of their environment? They're just they haven't escaped it yet. They haven't been exposed, because with most people today, when you present them with facts that go against their beliefs, instead of looking at the facts and reconsidering their position, they simply, that's why it's these cop-outs of you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're anti-abortion, anti-pro-choice, and they call it these things like pro-choice, right? So if you're against it, you're anti-choice for women. Yeah. Black Lives Matter.
Yep.
If you're against that movement that went and burned Minneapolis to the ground, then you don't believe that Black Lives Matter. And
Yep.
so they put you in these little positions where you have to then defend that. No, I have nothing against black people. I'm just saying maybe don't burn cities down to get your point across. Or no, I believe women should have a choice, but maybe maybe not after 7 months, 8 months, where it's a baby that could technically be born, and kill it and have a doctor pull out the pieces not to get too gory. So you're just put into these positions where they're, because like if they call you a racist for being against Black Lives Matter, now they don't need to listen to your arguments, because who's going to listen to a racist? And who would really sit down and and converse back and forth with a racist? And so I think, like, I have some friends that have been posting, Kamala Harris, a lot of friends who support Trump. And I think what it comes down to, same thing with the Israel, and Hamas war, which we won't get too into, but like, I think it's a big part of it is an algorithm problem. And so if I support Trump, I'm going to get all sorts of news about how Kamala's this, a Marxist, how she's, anti-capitalism, what she did in the border, what she did as a DA. And I'm going to get Trump, and they'll be showing me things that, like how, Trump's good speeches, what he did for the US, which will just give me that confirmation bias, and vice versa. So when you speak to someone who like lives in the same city sometimes, the same town, same neighborhood, and you guys have different beliefs, you're both getting fed information that's completely opposite to the other. So then you sit across from each other and you're like, how can you not see that Trump is the worst thing that could happen to America? And you're like, how can you not see that he's the guy, that's against the establishment? And I think that's where the gap normally sits, is just an algorithm problem. You just get constant confirmation bias and then controversy against, whoever you're against.
Wow. You want to know who rules over you is the people that you can't criticize. That's what Naval Ravikant says. The people that you can't criticize are the people who rules over you. And another thing Naval says is the left won the cultural war, and now they're shooting all the survivors. And it's so crazy. I think that there's this collective mind, because even too right now we're on camera, and I had just this instinct of like, George Orwell's Big Brother. Don't talk about the system. Don't talk about the system, because it can lead to my downfall. I think, one, there's this tribalism plus emotions plus lack of critical thinking. So people want to identify with a tribe, and it's so intertwined with the emotions of good versus evil, good versus bad. And then it's so crazy that just so many people lack the ability to critically think. What got me to start to question my left-wing beliefs after going to liberal arts school and growing up in a blue state was COVID. During COVID, we weren't allowed to leave our house, but this is when BLM was going on. And I think there is good intentions for equality when it comes to BLM, but they were burning down cities. And this was during a worldwide pandemic. There was no word of mass super spreader. But during Trump's rallies, that was a mass super spreader. So when I started to see that, I'm like, wait. I'm no genius, but that seems hypocritical. Another thing, man. So I was applying for reality TV. I almost got casted on the show Big Brother. I'm talking to the casting producer, right? And this was over the phone, so she couldn't see what I looked like. I'm a very ambiguous looking person. I got European roots, Native American roots, African American roots, and Latin American roots in me. I'm a mix. And when I told her that I was a person of color, she said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all the things that you're going through. This is a white woman. And see, it has good intentions. It has good intentions, but she didn't realize she was reinforcing a superiority complex that you need to apologize for the color of my skin, because that must put you on some pedestal that I'm not at your level. I'm below you. So it's like reverse. It's racism in a indirect way. Yeah. So after those things, I'm like, wait a minute. And then Matrix talks about bureaucracy, about positions of power. It's really not white versus black. It's rich versus poor. And the rich versus poor are trying to disguise it as black versus white. We're talking about emotions, about character attacks. They call that ad hominems. Instead of looking at the validity of our argument, if you disagree with me, you're a homophobe, you're a xenophobe, you're a racist. So instead of trying to critique and defend my argument, now I got to defend my character. And if you're on the defensive, you're already at a loss. And that just goes back to, and at that point, I don't need to argue my point, because, I'm not going to sit down with a KKK member and explain why black people, are human beings too, right? And so
it's fascinating for me. My journey was, around like 13, 14, 15. I started watching. I don't know if you remember. It's like this Facebook page called Now This.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they're very like left leaning.
Yep.
And especially as a kid, you watch it, and you're like, well, it makes sense. Like on paper, everyone should have the right to housing.
Yep.
Everyone should be able to live, in peace. Everybody, should have the same equal rights as everybody else, right? And then for me, as I got older, around like 16, 17, I was at a fireworks business and I was working all the time. And you start to kind of like, hold on a minute. All these people are complaining about what they don't have. I'm out here at midnight working on like, my trailer, getting it ready. I'm like 16. And you start to look at it and you're like, and I saw my dad growing up, my parents working super hard. And then I started to get exposed to people like Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, and just these people who are like telling you things that just made so much logical sense. And you hear about them, and they're so well like hidden from mainstream news. So all you hear about them, racist, far right, all of this. And then you start to actually listen to the words that they're saying and what they're talking about. And you're like, this makes perfect sense. And so when they ask, like, does everyone deserve the same? I think equal opportunity and equality of outcome is two completely different things, right? Like like as a first generation American Israeli, I came here, I should get the same opportunity to go out and go out and chase after my dreams and live the American dream, but I shouldn't get equal outcome, right? Equality of outcome of some guy who's been at this for 12 years, busting ass, taking all the risks, and now drives a Lambo, and I look at him and say, well, he must have done something or wronged somebody to get there. And so you see a lot of it, like, especially young people our age, they have no identity, there's no patriotism.
Yeah.
And so that's something that Israel contrasts, is where people are proud to be an Israeli. They're proud to go and defend their country, and they'll stand and they're willing to lay their lives down on the line for it. And Americans today, and a lot of people in the West, and that same, like that white woman who apologized to you, they have no national pride.
Yeah.
Absolutely none. And so they find these places, whether it's, Antifa, BLM, pro-Palestine, whatever it is, it's something where they feel like they're part of a group and fighting against the big guy.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's something I think the left did incredibly well, is they took over all of the important parts of our society, you know, which is media, education, government, business, tech, and all of that. And they really got it in such a chokehold that when you speak to someone and they tell you like why they think the way they think, left leaning, you can almost understand how they got there. They're seeing and all they're bombarded with is things that just give them confirmation bias, right? Yeah. And so it's fascinating to me. After around 17 is when I started shifting my beliefs and my values, and now you see the outcome. Things like Europe as well. You walk around Europe and I mean, you just walk around and you're like, there are no men.
Yeah.
There's no men. Like everyone's walking with their shoulders down, head down, and you see just this like shame about where they come from, and that's how these fabrics of society start to break. If you look at it historically, the Roman Empire, the Babylonians, the Turks, everyone, the Spanish Empire, the French, the British Empire, all of these empires had a very similar trajectory as the U.S. Empire, which is they hard men, right, fought, conquered, and created an extremely wealthy society, which then created a lot of laziness and just lethargicness, and people like for example right now the Russians, the Chinese, people who are hungry to become the world power. We all got lazy and they all got lazy and were eventually taken over. I think this cycle is sort of like starting to show itself.
Yeah. Going back to like beliefs, they say when you're young, when you're young and you're a liberal, or wait, no.
If you're not
Okay, yeah, so you want to go?
Sure. Yeah, so they say like if you're not a socialist when you're young, you don't have a heart. And if you're not a Republican or conservative when you're older, you don't have a brain.
Yeah.
And just to touch on that, like it makes perfect sense because you don't understand how the world works. You're like, yeah, of course, everyone should just live in peace and be friends, you know, and everyone should get to drive a Lamborghini just because they want to. And then you get older and you're like, hold on, like that's just not how the world works, right? And I think the more you accept like personal responsibility in the face of what the world is, instead of trying to change the fabric and the physics and you know the laws of the universe, the more resistance you put up to that, the more difficult your life will be.
Yeah, and we're talking about capitalism. Capitalism's criticism is it does not create equal opportunity. Everyone should be granted equal opportunity, but let's not get equal opportunity and equal outcome confused.
Right.
Because naturally, people have different skill sets. Some people are going to work harder. Some people are not going to work as hard. And there is generational inequalities that, like, not every, depending on where you live, you weren't granted the same opportunities as other people. But let me give this example. If there was a wealth distribution where everyone started off with the same amount of money, in 10 years in a free market, there would be a wealth distribution, because there would be people who invest in business, work hard, create business. They're going to earn more income. Then there will be people who just spend on things that rust, rot, and depreciate. Yep. For example, during COVID, like the first week of COVID, I was on like like Zoom calls with friends just talking. I remember there was this girl. She's like, I can't wait for my stimulus check. I'm going to go buy bikinis with it. The government gave us money for us to get basic needs, but she went and spent it on bikinis. So that's why it's a fallacy. If there was a wealth distribution, everyone would be equal.
Yeah.
It's not like that. Even too, like when 5-year-olds are reading books, some 5-year-olds will read faster than other people.
Yeah.
So like capitalism is the best system. It's not perfect, but it's the best system for right now.
By far, when you compare it to socialism and communism, I mean, communism and socialism are responsible for over 200 million deaths.
Yeah.
Like, show me, you know, and they point to these like small countries like Belgium or Luxembourg, and you're like, well, they're socialist.
Yeah.
They have 6 million people, you know, in their entire country.
Yeah.
And are extremely wealthy countries. And when people in Europe talk to you about, well, you guys don't have free healthcare. First of all, I know we do have free healthcare. You know, I sell it daily.
Yeah.
and then and it just shows you that they have no basic understanding of economics.
Yeah.
You make $80,000 a year. You get taxed 60% of that, right? And then they give you free healthcare.
Yeah.
Right? And people will stand there and die on that sword that they have free healthcare. And so here we get taxed, you know, depending on what you are, let's say corporate tax 21%, and you got to pay for your own healthcare. The amount that you're actually paying for these socialist, help me out here with the word, just socialist
Programs.
Yeah, programs, is you end up actually spending a lot more than what we do here in the U.S. Right? And so I do believe capitalism, I agree with you, is by far the best system ever created, ever. And then most people don't understand, you know, I never went to school. And so I realized, you know, I came to the realization that, and I'm not the only one, but that this is all by design. When, you know, for me, the idea of going to a 9 to 5 is so foreign. And when I see people who, you know, and in some cases they have a better work ethic than I do.
Yeah.
They're like there every single day, 9 or 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And you realize that from 0 to 18, that's exactly what they did. They went to school, they woke up at 6, you know, the high school next to where I live starts at like 7:30. These are 14-year-old kids who have to wake up at 5:45.
Yeah.
Go sit in school, learn subjects they couldn't care less about. And all it is training for the next 45 years of their life, which is having a boss, having someone tell you what to do, doing things you don't want to do, sitting there and just doing as you're told, and continuing the cycle, you know, of like a rat on a wheel. And so when you realize that, that's part of like what escaping the matrix, even though, you know, that term is so overused. Escaping the matrix is stepping out of that and being able to remove yourself from like what you had been taught your entire life
Yeah.
and what people expect is the next 45, 50 years of your life. And so for me, I've traveled. I've been to Europe. I've been to South America. I've been to Africa. In Morocco. I've not come across a better system than what we have here in the U.S.
Yeah.
And you can't convince me otherwise.
Speaking about the matrix in our circle, people are making in a month what people make in a year.
Right.
Now transparency, I'm not making a yearly salary in a month, but some of my best friends are, and it goes against what we were told, and it almost gets to the point I have one foot in the matrix, one foot out of the matrix.
Sure.
And sometimes, like some of my family, I just withhold information because they don't understand.
Yeah.
They don't my friend just made $100,000 in a month. That is the gold standard for what somebody would make in a year.
Yeah.
And they won't understand. And so there gets to a point though in life where not everyone is meant to understand. The message isn't meant for everyone, and you can't convince everybody.
Yeah.
You can't convince everybody what you're on, because there's going to be people that they're like, yo, that's crazy. And that can affect your ability on the situation. It can affect your mindset.
Yeah.
So once you escape the matrix, you open up a whole new world, the red pill and blue pill. By definition, red pill is like seeking the real truth. Blue pill is like ignorance is bliss. And so seeing how people are making $50,000, $100,000 per month, it just goes against everything that I knew. And if I asked advice for somebody who lives in that matrix 9 to 5, and there's nothing wrong with the matrix or 9 to 5, I'm here right now because my family has sacrificed working long hours.
Yeah.
But in order to break through that, you have to reject conventional wisdom.
Yeah. 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 You have to go against everything that society has told you you're supposed to do. And it's funny, a lot of people say like, oh, I'd love to own my own business so I can have time freedom and do what I want.
That's a lie.
Boy, that's just, that's another story you get fed is, I right now with the company, we were working from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And that's like, and that's not even that crazy.
Yeah.
And so when most people are just now willing to make that sacrifice, but it's a paradigm, it's like a paradigm shift that you have to go through. Because if you told me right now, make $1 million a month, like to me, that's such an exorbitant amount of money, even though I understand that there's steps and there's ways to get there and there's, people doing it. It's something that's so like big in terms of what my current, paradigm is, that I'm not the type of guy that makes $1 million a month.
Yeah.
And so when people look at that, they feel helpless. And I understand, because when you tell someone, hey, this guy just made $100,000 and everyone around them is looking for change in their couches, and the gold standard is making $3,000 to $5,000 a month. It's a complete paradigm shift that you have to go through, and for most people, it's a scary thing to do. Like once you open yourself up to that people are doing it, and there is a possibility, it requires something completely different from you, and so that's why most people, they look at it and they're like, this guy's a drug dealer or a criminal.
Yep.
Or he did something, he stepped over people to get there, because it's a cop out to where like, I'm not that type of person, so I'll never make that kind of money. And so for me, it was, and we've talked about this before, but meeting people in finance, you meet these people, and we were hanging out with this guy in New York at a real estate event, and we were meeting people who were running crypto funds of $600 million and hedge fund managers of $5 billion. And we were with this guy who was in charge of purchasing all the real estate for the Saudi royal family, and these numbers that they're throwing around. Like, I've never heard these numbers, like these are, you just like, it's so far removed, and for most people, they'll never come across somebody who's in that position. And so it's such a foreign concept that people are actually making that kind of money and in charge of that kind of wealth. And when you finally are able to break that barrier and meet these people, and they've obviously done a lot of things right, and they think big and they have great mindsets, but they're not they're not what you'd expect.
Yeah.
They're not a superhuman, you know. They're people who simply, you know, one guy focuses on opening a pizza restaurant, one guy focuses on building dominoes, you know, and those are the two same human beings who at the end of the day go to sleep and wake up and have to brush their teeth. And so once you're able to start breaking those barriers down, you're able to then kind of reverse engineer what they did
Yep.
and who they are,
Yep.
and it shows you a pretty clear path. You know, it's fascinating. Even still, you say $600 million, you're like, that just doesn't even make any sense, right? But then you driving around Miami, you pass these skyscrapers. It's owned by somebody.
It's owned by somebody,
Right.
man. You know, one thing you said to me that's always stuck with me is it takes the same amount of time and energy to build something small, to build a business that is small, compared to building a business that is big.
It's fascinating, right? And the example is somebody who opens up a local restaurant can spend 15 to 20 years building that up and once they retire, they sell it for maybe a 1x multiple,
Yeah.
8-month multiple. Your entire 20 years is condensed into 8 months of earnings. And that's how you sell it.
Yeah.
And for some people, you know, and you can use an extreme example like Tesla or Amazon or Facebook were built in under 10, 15 years. They were built into trillion-dollar companies. So they spent less time
Yeah.
building the largest company in the world opposed to the guy who spent 20 years,
Yeah.
building up the restaurant. And that's the paradigm shifts that you just have to go through to be able to get to that next level.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, my friend Deepak and I, something that we always talk about is we're thinking too small. 10K per month from where I started, that's a lot of money, and that still is a lot of money. But there's some people, 10K a month would be a bad month. There are some people that 100K per month would be a bad month. There's some people that $1 million per month would be a bad month. We're thinking too small. Somebody's doing it. Why not me?
Yeah, and you know, I think there's a natural stage of progression that happens there. I don't know how many people started their businesses saying I'm going to build a $10 billion business.
Yeah.
Or if Mark Zuckerberg said I'm going to I'm going to have hundreds of billions of dollars in my account. I don't know if you're able to see that far ahead. I think when you say like 10K a month, 50K a month, there's those progressions, and you know, and it goes back to your identity at the end of the day. Identity, skills, and everything that comes with that. But your identity is like, what do I expect every single month? How much is my time worth? And what am I focusing on? When I was 12, I was focusing on opening a dog business, right?
Yep.
And the roof on that is being able to, you know, hire some friends and build up, you know, this little routine of dogs and everything. And then I started the fireworks business, and it went like, okay, like, you know, I want multiple locations, and I want to be making, you know, 5 figures from this. And then I started in solar, and it became, okay, like my goal and what I want is going to be in the 6-figure range. So now it requires different, you know, a different level of thinking in terms of leadership, in terms of skills, sales, and everything. And my identity was someone that was making 6 figures a year. And so the things that I focused on would be nothing less, right? Because that's what I expected from myself, and the world gave that. And today with this insurance business, which has been a whirlwind we can get into, we're coming into this with the intention of investing more money than we've ever invested in our lives, with the numbers that we're talking about, millions of dollars. And, you know, when I spoke about it with a few people, because I found, and I'm not, you know, I heard this from somebody else, but the more you speak to somebody about what you want, right, the more you like tell them like, this is how much I'm putting in, this is how much I'm going to make, everything. It's these little dopamine hits that you get. And when they praise you for it, you feel like you've already accomplished it. And so, you know, when I spoke about this with my dad, for example, that's somebody who's a bit closer to me. We were talking about the numbers, and he goes, stop, like, it stresses me out, those numbers, right?
Yeah.
Because my dad is thinking at his like max capacity, and so he's right. Like those kinds of numbers, you know, whether you're a millionaire, billionaire, it's pretty large numbers. But that's what, once you start to focus on that, and you're like, I want $1 million problems, then you start to just attract opportunities that will put you in positions to potentially reach those millions of dollars, and that requires something completely new. You have to break through this sort of barrier to start focusing on those sorts of things and who you have to become in that process. And your identity becomes, if you're going to talk to me about an opportunity, it's got to be in the $500,000 range, $1 million range, and those opportunities just start to show up.
Yeah, it's a spiritual game at that point.
Yeah.
And it's something that we're talking about. I just want to share right now about career-wise, what should we do? I think the biggest lie society says is do what you're passionate about. People are like, I'm graduating college with 80K in debt. I don't know what I'm passionate about. I don't know what I want to do. Well, for me, how I was able to have one foot in the matrix and one foot out of the matrix was I figured out this formula I call what is your scarce in-demand value you provide to the world.
Yes.
What is something that not a lot of people are doing that people need that you're good at? So for me, it was content creation. I came up on taking people's podcasts and creating short clips for Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts. What's something that not a lot of people are doing? I was a first adapter of clips. I was a first adapter of creating clips on TikTok in 2021. So I had an advantage. I'm really fucking good at what I do. I've created over 60 million organic views for people, and I'm good at it.
Huge.
So with that, I was able to create a service, and that has allowed me to have a lot of flexibility in my life where I'm not really tied down in one location. For the most part, I have calls I have to check into. I have a deadline for when I get my work done, but then that leaves a lot of flexibility in my life. So going back against the matrix and leaving the matrix, forget what you're told. Forget a lot of the things that you're told.
Yeah.
If everyone's going right, go left.
I think, Warren Buffett has this amazing quote that says be fearful when people are greedy.
Yeah.
Be greedy when others are fearful. And you look at that because it's not a natural thing to be an entrepreneur. It's not a natural thing. If it was natural and it was easy, then it wouldn't hold the value that it holds, and you wouldn't be in the position that you would be. And so I think when you go into something like that, you expect it to be difficult. You expect those late hours. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in my business and just cried. You just break down. You're like, it's so difficult. You're pushing through everything that society has told you you're not supposed to do. You're taking these huge risks, working your ass off. You're skipping parties. You're skipping dates. You're skipping events. You're doing all these things, and without a guarantee that it's even going to be worth it at the end, right? And so there's definitely that tug and pull about am I doing the right thing? And Hormozi talks about this. Sometimes you'll do it for 5, 6, 7 years, and there still won't be any results.
Yeah.
And at the end, you might not succeed, right? But I think what a life wasted to just be normal, to be average. And you meet older people who are kind of nearing the end of their lives, and the majority of them, they just talk about all the regrets that they had.
Yep.
Now that might be something that you can only see once you're there, and you can and while you're in it, it might not be as clear. That's a really scary thing. You get to the end of your life where you don't have the opportunity to redo, and now that you're like, I get it now, just send me back and I'll do it. And nobody ever talks about the regret of trying, the regret of walking up to that girl, the regret of going to travel. Just talk about the regrets of what they didn't do and what they allowed to take control over them and hold them back from pursuing the life that they wanted. And so through it all, I always tell myself, if I want easy, I can just go get a job.
Yeah.
Right? And that's always an option. And that scares the shit out of me,
Yeah. Yeah. We experience time linearly, but we understand it backwards. And so one of the greatest things I ever did was quit my job, go all in on creating videos, and moving to Miami all on a limb. There was no certainty that it was going to work out, but I figured it out. And I am still celebrating that win from 2022. We were just on the yacht last week. I have great friends around me. I have great networks. I'm in South Beach. I love my life. And that's because I took a risk in the past, and now I'm still praising myself. I'm still celebrating myself from a hard decision I made in the past, but now it works out. And we talk a lot about this. There's somebody who got his shit together in his 20s, and there's somebody who got his shit together in his 30s. They're the same age. When they meet at 35, they will be unrecognizable. And that's something that I stress myself. I believe the flood is coming, and I'm trying to build my ark now. So when it does come, I will be in preparation to be safe, to be secure, and then I can get my loved ones and my friends and my family, make sure that they're secured. Because I am at times being stoic, where I'm putting off instant pleasure, instant gratification to get work done now that will set me up in a advantageous and desirable future.
And I think, that perspective, having it now, and we've spoken about delayed gratification a lot. It's one of the most difficult things to do, especially at our age. I deleted social media a while back, and I'm not sure if you've watched the Social Dilemma.
Yeah.
And so and I've heard multiple psychologists speaking about what it does to your brain and how everything around us. Today, we're able to order a car from our phone, right? You click a button, it's there. You're able to order food immediately. If you want to go look at porn, you're able to see the most beautiful women on the planet with just a couple clicks, right? You're able to get everything you want super quick, and when these reels and everything on social media and these dopamine hits, it gives everything to you immediately, that immediate gratification. And when you look around, I think that's one of the largest epidemics that we're facing here in the US, is everyone's desire to have it right now. Right? And for me, the gym is always an amazing example. When you walk in and you lift weights for the first time, you'll see virtually no difference. And 2 weeks later, you'll see virtually no difference. In a month, you'll start to see a little bit. In 6 months, you'll start to see a lot more. And in a year, and 3 years, 4 years later of going in every single day and not seeing immediate results, you look back on it and you go, this is the greatest thing I've done for myself, and it was earned, because it's not something that you can just buy. You can't buy a good body. You can even take steroids. You still need to show up in the gym and work out. And so I think at our age, it's a conflict, man. On one hand, we get one life. We're young, we're good looking, we're fit, we're in Miami. We want to have fun, we want to build good memories. And on the other hand, we have, if we just even live to the average of 75, 78, we have another 50 years on this planet. And that ends, those 20s, they end. And 30s, and 40s, and family, and 50s, and 60s, and grandchildren. And if you don't set yourself up in a position to where you can, to where when you reach a point and you're not able to take all those risks, and you're not as flexible, and you have children, and like you were talking about the flood coming eventually, if you don't set yourself up, I think you look back and you go, oh shit, like, those memories of the parties and the girls I was with are gone. And now I'm standing in front of my wife, and I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills next month, and I can't just go in and full send 100K to try to build some business. And I think that level of stress will be something that is avoidable when at this age you say, look, this isn't the 80s anymore, it's not the 90s. A lot of things are changing in the world. And I think, in terms of traveling, when you travel to a place like Colombia, I was in Albania. You go to Albania, communism ended there in the 90s.
Wow.
And before that, they were completely shut out from the world. They had a crazy dictator who built 173,000 bunkers all over the country. You see these little mushroom heads, because he thought the world was doomed. It was basically Europe's North Korea,
Really? I didn't know that.
Completely. And so, those 85-year-olds tasting Coca-Cola for the first time. And you go there, and in Morocco, I'm from Israel, the conflict's there, Colombia, Mexico, you go to these places, and you see that the world's not all sunshine and rainbows, and it's not all about chasing your passions. And I think as the world shifts into more instability, the strong survive, and the same priorities that somebody, a teenager growing up in the early 2000s or the 90s has, is completely different from the world we live in today. And if you don't set yourself up in a way to protect yourself and your family through financial abundance, which is what gives you the power and freedom, I think to look back on that and to have wasted all these 20s and all this energy on strictly just things that give you immediate gratification and pleasure will be a deep regret,
So I agree with you, and I have a little bit different approach. So for me, my skill is content creation, and I'm able to make decent from that. And another thing that I do is I enjoy myself when I'm going out socially, because whenever you say I can't afford that, you are projecting your ability. You are doubting your ability to make that back in the future.
Yep.
Now, I'm not spending thousands going out, but if you're like, oh, I can't go out, you're gonna spend what, $60? You don't think you'll make $60 in the future?
Right.
So for that, I say I'm investing in my social life.
Cool.
And so I have this skill of content creation that I'm able to support myself. And another hack is my network. I have great people around me, and we're always talking about business ideas and how we're going to have that 8-figure exit. So those relationships compound over time, being in the right place, doing the work, accruing good karmic debt. And I believe that, you got to be stoic, and I can enjoy myself, be epicurious, and it will all work out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I think as long as it's being done intentionally, and there's a difference between going out once a week, once every 2 weeks with your boys, and having amazing conversations, being around good people. I think what I missed when I was younger and fully just entrenched in business and had all these employees and everything, I didn't prioritize how much my health and my well-being was tactically an amazing investment into my business, right? Everything else fell to the wayside, and I still suffer with that. To me, I can go laser focused and forget about everything and everyone around me. And then I reach a point where I'm like deprived of social outings, deprived of kicking back with the boys, and then it kind of just reaches a boiling point that then I have to go and completely just like backtrack and build it, all at once. So I totally agree. I think, the examples of kids going to college, and then after that, they continue their binge drinking lifestyle and drugs and no, nothing to offer to the world, no skills, nothing to offer a woman. I think those people will end up regretting that big time. Specifically here in South Florida and maybe New York, going out is a form of business. You're meeting people, you're connecting the network that you were talking about, and just overall well-being. I know I struggle with that, prioritizing that as much as I prioritize business. And I think tactically it's a mistake, and it's something that I've had to pay for many times with health and mental health.
But you are very successful in life, in your journey. You're what, 24?
24.
You've done things 24s can only dream of. You've done things by 24 that 40-year-olds are doing. You've made 5 figures per month at what, 20? You're in great shape. You have an amazing relationship. When it comes to society and becoming a young man, what are some lies that society has told us that has good intentions but has had a poisonous effect?
To enjoy your youth.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's something that society has told us through our parents, through social media, through work, through friends, is that you're a kid and be a kid.
Oh,
And that's because, and it goes back to what we were talking about before with that instant gratification.
Yeah.
It feels good, dude. It feels good to just go chase chicks. It feels good to do drugs. It feels good to drink. It feels good to focus on the here and now, with no foresight into what it's going to impact, in your future. And I think as men, especially as young guys, it sets you up for a life of playing catch up.
yeah.
And in my opinion, it's one of the biggest things that we tell like people our age that they'll have to pay for in the future. Well, what are your thoughts? What are some lies you feel like we're being told?
A lie that we're told when it comes to health and wellness: breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
Interesting.
I like to intermittent fast. And not only that, if you look at typically our breakfast food, Edmonton's donuts, powdered donuts, Fruit Loops. Now, don't get me wrong, Fruit Loops are delicious, but that should be a dessert, not a breakfast. We're fueling our youth on Fruity Pebbles. That's just sugar crystals.
Yeah.
So then, their blood insulin and blood sugar spikes, then they crash, then they have no energy, no attention, and then they can't concentrate in school. So, it's because he has ADHD, prescribe him Vyvanse, Adderall.
Right.
Then they're on drugs, they're on methamphetamine, rebranded methamphetamine. I think that's a big thing. And I like the intermittent fasting. I don't do it every day, but 80% of the time I intermittent fast, because when you're not eating, your body cannibalizes body fat. You burn fat when you're not eating. So be intuitive with it. I work with the godfather of health and wellness, Mark Sisson, and he talks about intuitive eating. So when you're hungry, eat. You don't need to count calories. Like, get protein, eat a high protein diet. But yeah, I think breakfast is the most important meal of the day is a scam. When you don't eat in the morning, let your body repair itself and burn fat.
Yeah, I like that. You ever heard of Jesse Osler?
Jesse Osler, that sounds familiar.
He's married to the woman who started Spanx.
Oh, Jesse Itzler.
Itzler.
Yeah, I love him, bro.
Jesse Osler is a friend from Dallas.
Yeah.
So you've heard of Jesse Itzler?
Yeah, I love him.
Yeah. So he spoke about it. He read a book in the 90s that spoke about only eating fruit until noon.
Yeah.
And it's this couple who wrote this book, and he decided to give it a try. And he said he just felt unbelievable from it, and for the last 35 years or so, he's only been eating fruit until 12.
Wow.
And I think diet, yeah, you're right. Diet is something here in the U.S. is, and that's part of it. It just goes back to like escaping the matrix, right?
Yeah.
Nutella was like, was touted as a good breakfast food. I mean, pure sugar just on and people just believe that.
Yeah.
You go to Europe and man, like you just don't really see fat people.
Yep.
You don't really see obese people walking around. And their relationship to food is completely different than what we have here. The amount of ingredients that are legally allowed in cereal or meat or McDonald's or any of the sort is completely restricted, and a lot of the things that we eat here are punishable by jail if they in Europe. And so I would agree, and I think that goes to gut, our gut health as well.
Yep.
Which controls everything. And so most of the health issues just comes from that. But again, just look at the matrix. Like, I think and not to segue into a completely different topic, but Trump, one of the things I love most about him and what he did with politics is he pulled back the veil.
Yeah.
And that, dude, was so overdue for someone to pull back the curtains.
Yep.
And for you to understand that it's all just a system designed to profit off of you at no matter the cost, right? And so when you look at the food as well, with cereal, the guy who created Kellogg's.
Yep.
And how he basically started that whole cereal is a good source of for breakfast. And so cereal, all the meats that we eat here, all the fats, and how they tell you not to eat butter, not to eat salt, not to eat meat. You basically do everything opposite of what they tell you to do. You'll live a pretty healthy life.
Yeah.